This comes from the ancient Greek mathematician and astronomer Archimedes. And he said, "Give me a place to stand and a lever long enough, and I will move the world." Hey, this is Brad Taves, and you are listening to the B-Rad podcast. This audio experience is an invitation for you to be radical in your becoming, to step into who you really are and to develop who you could be. This is episode number 10. This is part 2 of a series entitled The Madness of Being Self-Made. In the spirit of Archimedes, today the place that we are going to stand and the lever that we are going to move is going to build upon what I talked about in part 1 of this series. In that, if you listen to that episode, I talked about metadata and hard drives and how our information is imprinted, it's embedded upon us, and we get to discover what it is, we get to remember what it is. Maybe we knew it at some point, but we forgot. And today I want to just take this a little bit further, and here is where we're going to go. Number 1, we're going to talk about epigenetics. Number 2, vinyl. And number 3, angel midwives. Okay, number 1. Epigenetics. This is a fascinating discovery in the health world and science where they are discovering that organisms will express their genes, and the modification of gene expression will change the organism itself. It's not the alteration of the genes and cutting out or adding or manipulating genetic material itself, but rather it is the expression of the genetic material. This study and this science and this uncovery is really quite a fascinating thing that is coming to the forefront, because what it is doing in many ways is that it is saying to ourselves, humans, is that no matter what genetic material you might have, you have the ability to turn those genes on and to have them expressed, or to just have them lay dormant. So for example, let's say that in your family background, there's a history of heart conditions or diabetes or some disease that you don't like, and you're afraid that it might come to you. Well, the truth is that although there might be genetic material that is passed on from generation to generation, you have the ability to either turn those genes on or to just let them remain dormant, and they still are within you, but because of your environmental choices, you are not allowing those genes to be fully expressed. Another way to look at this is that let's say you had a clone of yourself and they're identical, like identical twin, but not even a twin. They're like an exact replication of you to the nth degree. And if you were to fast forward the tape 20 years from now, who you are and who your clone is, it would depend entirely on the choices that you made between now and the 20 years from now. And regarding what you ate, regarding your thought patterns, regarding your habits, all of that would determine what you end up looking like, how you behaved, and how you moved in the world, and all those things. So the clone of yourself is not the end result of you. You get to decide how you're going to turn out. Another way to look at this is that let's say you had a bunch of letters on a screen, and all the letters are the same, but over time, the letters take shape, and there is punctuation, and one paragraph can be beautiful, it can have an eloquent flow to it, it makes a lot of sense, but the other paragraph is all jumbled and it doesn't, all the punctuation's in the wrong spot, and that's because the genes just got expressed differently. Nothing changed, there was no new letters added or new whatever, but it was just how those letters are actually arranged. So a level deeper in epigenetics, what is actually happening is that you've got essentially two parts. You've got the genome, which is the DNA of yourself. It's the blueprint. It's the hardware that's been given to you. And then you have the epigenome. And the epigenome is the intelligence. It's the software that tells the genome what to do. It's the command station to say, I'm going to instruct you how your genes are going to get expressed. And this is the part that we have control in. We are able to participate in the epigenome phenomenon that will tell our genomes what to do. So the genome is the thing that does the work. It's the hardware, it's the imprint, the DNA that does the work, but the epigenome tells the genome what to do. So what can we learn from epigenetics? We can learn that we are not the equivalent to what we do. We can separate ourselves to say, this is my DNA imprint, this is the blueprint, these are the genes that I have, but what I do with the genes, that is a different story. That is different from me. You can have bad instructions that lead to bad results, but that doesn't mean that you're bad to begin with. It just means that you've given yourself bad instruction, and so you lead yourself towards negative results. Another way to phrase this would be to say that you, meaning the essence of you, the DNA, the imprint, hasn't failed. You can't say, I am a failure. But what you can say is, I have been using my hardware incorrectly. And so I've been failing my hardware by having software that has viruses and is corrupt and doesn't work properly. From the moment that we are born, we are given an environment to grow up in. And because we don't have any choice in the matter, we are imprinted with the beliefs and the systems and the ideologies of our environments and our families. So we end up liking certain foods and cheering for certain teams and preferring this over that and making certain judgment calls, all based on the programming that happens to us from very early on. That is what is going on when we are growing up in the world. This study of epigenetics really leads to the two big questions that this podcast really dives into: is who am I really, and why am I here? So the who am I, this is the genome. This is I don't have a choice in the matter as to what my genetic composition is, and my true identity in my beingness, that's been given to me. That is the gift, as I talked about in the first part of this series. But the second part of that question is, why am I here? There is a choice that is given to me in that situation, and the epigenetics is that that's the epigenome that gets to have some say in the matter of, well, this is who I am, and I'm going to discover that. But now, what do I do with that? How do I move in the world? What kind of activity or work am I going to be involved in? And that is the thing that we get to participate in. Okay, number 2, vinyl. I have a daughter, and she just bought a record player recently, and she's been listening to all these vinyl records, and it is so awesome because we we live in such a digital age with MP3s and content that is on our digital devices, but to have an actual hardware system that plays real music and sounds imperfect and it's unique is really an awesome thing. And in fact, there is a recurrence, a resurgence of analog coming back into our world. We see that in the decline in book sales, not hard book sales, but like Kindle books or ebooks. And there's even a book I heard recently called The Revenge of Analog, and haven't read it yet. But the principle is that we want the realness, we want the imperfection, we want the tangible things in our hand or to listen to, and we're called back to that. If you look at our own bodies, we are really old school human beings that are operating in a very high-tech world. I don't think much has really changed with our operating system, our hardware, over the thousands of years, over the billions of people and the generations and centuries. I'm not sure if we've really changed that much, right, as far as our body goes. But man, we live in a world that is fast-paced and it's always evolving and changing, and technology is improving. What we used 10 years ago, we don't even touch anymore. And if you look at your credit card statement, how many things are on your bill that didn't even exist 20 years ago, 50 years ago? And even words like Google is now a verb in the dictionary, right? It's wild, but we live in this society, and yet we still are very analog. We're very vinyl. There's a vinyl version of ourselves that is having to deal with the very high tech digital world that we live in. There's a really great movie called Hidden Figures, and the premise behind this movie is that there's a group of mathematicians in NASA, and they happen to be Afro-American women who are brilliant at what they do, and they were very instrumental in helping put a man into space, and they were competing with Russia at the time. And there was a scene where they just got this IBM computer, and they didn't know how to work it, but these women who had been called computers, actually, that was the name that they gave them, they did all the computations by hand, but now they had this new operating system and piece of technology, and they brought in these women to actually run it. And the interesting thing about that is they themselves were still very analog, right? But they were called to program this massive computer in this huge room that no one knew how to use, but they needed it to do these calculations really fast. And the principle here, again, is we are the hardware. We are the ones with the information, and we can learn how to use information outside of us, and it can change the way that we make decisions and the outcomes of our life. So the couple questions that come to mind out of this is that what is the outcome of our work? What is the outcome of the potentiality of our genome? So our epigenome is the one that has the information to give instruction, but what is the possibility of our genome? If the genome is the thing that does the work, what is that capable of? What could it look like? Are we expecting some level of perfection, some digital quality from an analog machine? Like, think about that. We are human. We are not digitized. We can use digital machines to analyze ourselves through blood samples and through different scientific X-rays and all those machines that we might use. But we ourselves are analog. We are cut from that cloth. But are we expecting a certain digital perfection to come as a result of that? There's a fantastic book by Marianne Williamson called The Law of Divine Compensation, and she says this: it doesn't matter whether you're contributing to the universe as a carpenter or a musician, a teacher or an artist, a janitor or a caretaker, a parent or a salesperson. And the list goes on and on. You can add whatever you want to that list, either what you're doing now or what different jobs there are in the world. And then she goes on to say, but what matters is our consciousness while we are doing it, our willingness to be of service in whatever way is presented, seeing nothing is either above us or beneath us, yet important because it's in front of us. There's another great book that I want to refer to by the author Stephen Pressfield, and the name of the book is called The War of Art. And I want to read to you this fantastic chunk and give you a little preface. He is talking about starting. When you endeavor to do something and you're about to step into a new project, something that you are excited about, we make that start, and this is how he describes it. When we conceive an enterprise and commit to it in the face of our fears, something wonderful happens. A crack appears in the membrane, like the first craze when a chick pecks at the inside of its shell. Angel midwives congregate around us. They assist as we give birth to ourselves, to that person we were born to be, to the one whose destiny was encoded in our soul, our genius. So poetic and so profound, and this imagery of the midwife coming to our aid, where we are birthing an idea and something is about to happen because we said yes. we were listening to the universe, we were listening to God, we were listening to the divine, and because of our commitment to step out in face of our fears and to start this project, to step into this new entrepreneurial endeavor, to take on that hobby, to say yes to that relationship, we are now caught up into the experience, and we're not alone in that experience. And the birthing experience, if we use this metaphor of angelic midwives rushing to our aid to help deliver, well, giving birth, and I can't speak from personal experience, just being on the sideline, that it is a messy, complicated, confusing, painful, yet joyful experience. Because something is about to happen. Something is going to be brought into the world that wasn't there before. Pressfield goes on later in the book, and he describes this as being in service to the mystery. And he says, we were put on earth to act as agents of the infinite, to bring into existence that which is not yet, but which will be through us. So if we have the birthing of the idea, the birthing of the work, the birthing of our activities, we are taking what is unseen, what is covered over in flesh with the womb and the baby that we can't see, but we know that it's there, and it's about to come into the world. So we move it from this unseen into the seen. And we are now in service to the mystery. And the mystery often, I think, is whispered to us. And going back to the War of Art, Pressfield talks about the muse coming to the aid of those who are saying yes, who are going to commit themselves. And the muse and the divine, it whispers to us, hey, I would like you to do this, or have you thought about this, or I'm going to implant an idea that you are going to be curious about, that you're going to be drawn to this. Another phrase in the book, he calls it the force that's yanking on your sleeve. What is that force that is tugging on you and nudging you and whispering to you ideas and thoughts? And are we paying attention to that? Or are we caught up in that madness of being self-made, where we have these idealized versions, the digitized versions of ourselves that we think we need to attain to? But meanwhile, there's a mystery of brooding inside of us, around us, that is inviting us into the work of self-expression, into the work of epigenetics, epigenomes expressing the genome of us, the DNA. We can miss it altogether. We can be so distracted and confused and just off course because we are not paying attention, and we're not paying attention to the mystery, and so we don't act in service of the mystery. We just do our own thing, and we make the assumption like, well, let's just get to work. Let's just make this happen. I don't need to spend any time trying to figure out myself, or just give me the task, give me the tool, and I'm gonna make this happen on my own. And the risk to that is we will miss out on meaningful work because we are just settling for mediocre work that just satisfies maybe a short-term game, but certainly not a long-term game. So to wrap this up, I want to leave this thought with you, are these two statements. I am not the work, but rather I am the one who does the work. I'll say that again. I am not the work itself, but I am the one who does the work. There's a big difference between the two here. If we associate ourselves with the work itself, our identity will always be in the balance. We really won't know who we are apart from our work. You take away the work, and I don't know who I am. You get to your deathbed and you die, everything's taken away, and that's very extreme. And at that point, maybe things get really clear as to who you are and why you're here, or why you're leaving, maybe. But I would want to learn that earlier on in my life, I suppose, to understand that my identity is not wrapped up in what I do. But who I am, I'm the one who does the work. I get to participate. I get to join into this dance of life, and I get to enjoy in the invitation and respond to the call, and to work with those angelic midwives that are giving birth ideas through me. Thanks so much for listening to this podcast. It means a lot to me that you would spend a few minutes of your day with me. So thanks so much for your time. If you appreciated what you heard, if it stirred you in some way, could you leave a rating and review on iTunes? By doing this, more people can hear the same message that you just heard. If you're listening to this podcast and it's not on iTunes, you can find the link to that on my website, which is Brad Taves, and that's spelled TOEWS.com. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook. Music today was brought to you by an artist by the name of Hal, and the two song titles are Run and Deeper, More Beautiful. And finally, to you, my friends, be radical and be resolved in your becoming of the one that you are now and of the one that you were always born to be.